Good evening, Rabbi. We're gonna discuss tonight the issue of lighting Shabbat candles because there was a lot of questions that we were asked about that, and also there's a lot of things that a person has to know regarding Shabbat candles, what has to be done, how it has to be done, when, where, all kinds of issues. So the truth is that a person has to be very careful about this mitzvah, but also you have to understand that this mitzvah was given basically to the women. It's a woman's mitzvah. So what does that mean? That if there's a woman living in the house, you have your wife or your mother or your whatever, whoever it may be, right? The head of the household, the lady who's the head of the household, she's the one who has to light the candles. That's the idea, She's the mitzvah is incumbent upon her. But that's only when she's there. But let's say there's no woman in the house, Let's say you're living as a bachelor or you're living, as a widower or God knows what, whatever it is, right? Or let's say your wife is away somewhere, she went to visit her parents somewhere, whatever. She's not there. So then you gotta light. Somebody has to light in the house. There's always has to be Shabbat candles. Somebody has to light. So therefore, right, the rule is that if the woman is not there, the man has to light. But if the woman is there, right, don't steal the mitzvah from her, and light yourself. Why? Because it's her mitzvah. It was given to her. She has the edge over you when it comes to that, right? That's the idea. So make sure you give her the proper respect and let her keep the mitzvah. Because the truth is, we're not allowed to steal mitzvah from one from the other. You know what I mean? What does that mean, steal mitzvah? Like, a person has a certain mitzvah that he does usually, and you come and grab it from him and take it, and do it yourself. You're taking his mitzvah. You're stealing. It's also theft kind of thing. So the truth is, the Gemara says that Rabbi Gamliel, one of the sages, used to. What he did was he made an enactment that if you steal somebody's mitzvah, you have to pay him for that. You got to pay because you took his mitzvah, which is a very important thing. So here also, right, we say don't take the mitzvah of the women and light the candles, without their permission, without their whatever, right? That's the idea. But if she tells you, listen, I'm not going to be able to light because let's say it's getting late, she's in the shower, she can't get out. So light for her, of course, ask her. You want me to light for you? You seem like you're in the shower. You're late. Okay, so I'll light for you. No problem. Next time. You light next time, right? But if it's not like that, then you have to let her light. That's the idea. So that's one thing I'm going to say. But anyway, the point is, right, that regarding this mitzvah, there's a lot of details, a lot of things that a person has to know. Says the Shulchan Aruch, this is in Siman Reish Samech Gimel. Right? Why is this important? Right? Reish Samech Gimel, it's like a number value. So what is that in numbers? Reish is 200, Samech is 60, and Gimel is 3. Right? So 263, right? It's chapter 263 in the Shulchan Aruch. In Orach Chaim, that's where it is. So why do I tell you that? Because in Hebrew it's the letters, right? Reish Samech Gimel. So my rabbi told us, he told us that there may be some significance to that. Why did he make it dafka, this chapter, this number for this work regarding the Shabbat candles? Because it has like Reish Samech Gimel, right? As we said, has a numerical value, but it also has an abbreviation factor here. What's the abbreviation? Right? Rabbi Reish Saadia Gaon, right? That's the 3 letters. So who was Rabbi Saadia Gaon? He was the one who fought against the Karaites. There was a certain sect of heretics at that time. Talking about 1,000 years ago and more. By the way, they're still around today, even these people. Like in a very small number. They're still around. I heard that they have some kind of a cult going on today as well. But anyway, the point is, right, that they had this heretical belief that since it says in the Torah that don't light any fire on Shabbat, in your habitations. That's what it says in the Torah. Don't light any fire. So they held that means that like it has to be dark in the house on Shabbat, like pitch dark. In other words, you can't even light the fire before Shabbat, according to them, right? Which is a very big mistake, by the way, because you're supposed to have light on Shabbat. You're supposed to have joy and pleasure. How are you going to have pleasure and joy in the dark? I mean. So therefore, right, these were heretics that held this way. So what they used to do is on Shabbat they used to sit in the darkness, They used to have a black Sabbath, as they say, right? It was a black Sabbath for them. So you don't want to have a black Sabbath, right? In music you can have, but not in Shabbat. That's something else, right? So he came to fight against them. This rabbi, it was Rabbi Sadiya Gaon. You know what I mean? He fought against these heretics, these Karaites, who interpreted everything, according to the simple meaning of the verses. They didn't believe in the oral Torah and the Zepir Torah. They didn't believe in that. They were heretics, So this is not the first time, by the way, we had people like that. There was also many groups like that, that came around. One or the other, right? Whatever. So one after the other. So Hashem should uproot all these groups, right, and bring them to extinction, right? So anyway, in order to tell you, right, that Rav Sadiya Gaon fought against those Karaites, he made the Siman, right, this chapter 263, which in the letters is Rav Sadiya Gaon. To tell you that this rabbi was the one who fought against. So what does that mean? That here is teaching you how to light candles for Shabbat. So just the opposite of what those heretics were saying, right? You can't light candles for Shabbat. That's the whole reason. Okay, whatever. So anyway, right, comes and says Shulchan Aruch that number one question is, right, how many candles you have to light? So the answer is that according to the minimal halacha, you can do one candle. One candle is enough. In those days, by the way, when they didn't have electricity, some people just had like one candle in the room, and that's what they used, to eat and to do their life at night. Can you imagine? One candle, that's it. That's the way they lived. So whoever was more wealthy could have several candles, or torches, in the house, kinds of. That's the way it was in those days. Right? So therefore, one candle is enough. But he says the custom is by some people to do two. Why is that? Because it says in the Ten Commandments, right? It says remember the day of Shabbat, and also it says keep the day of Shabbat, to observe the day of Shabbat. There's, by the way, in the Torah, there's 2 times that it's written in the Ten Commandments, not one time. 10 Commandments are written 2 different places, right? So one is in Shemot, the book of Exodus, and then the other one is in the book of Devarim, right? The Deuteronomy. So one place over there in the Ten Commandments it says, right, remember the day of Shabbat. The other one says, keep the day of Shabbat, observe the day of Shabbat, right? So each one, right, since it has 2 different words, they light 2 candles in order to commemorate those 2 different commandments in the 10 Commandments of the Shabbat. Okay, so that's why a lot of people do 2. By the way, that's the standard thing, The standard lighting is 2 candles, basically. According to the custom, most people, like in most families, probably, the wife lights 2 candles. You know what I mean? Whatever. But comes the Ramah over here and says, you're allowed to do more if you want. Let's say if you want to do 3 or 4, no problem, So he says, by the Ashkenazim, it was accustomed to do like that, 3 or 4. And then here the Beretev also brings another custom. He says the custom is to do 7. Why 7? Because the Arizal says so. It was a Mekubal. According to the Kabbalah, you should light 7 candles. There's all kinds of things, corresponding to the days of the week. That's what, 7 days of the week. All kinds of things like this, But the point is, right, bottom line, is that according to the bare bones halacha, 1 is enough. But some people have a custom to do more, So you can do as much as you want, basically, But the truth is, since we came to this point, we have to get to a fundamental issue that we have to deal with here, which is that, the rabbi said light candles for Shabbat. What's the reason, by the way, they gave us to light candles for Shabbat? Because Shalom Bait, what does that mean? The people shouldn't fight with each other. Because when you're sitting in the dark, shot in the dark, you're sitting in the dark. So what happens is that you can't see nothing. You bump into each other, So there's no peace in the house. Always get upset like that. You're sitting in the dark. It's very upsetting to sit like that. So in order to have peace in the house, they said to light the candles. And also Oneg Shabbat. What does that mean, Oneg Shabbat? To enjoy, the light, to have enjoyment from the light of Shabbat. So those are the 2 reasons why they said to light Shabbat candles, the rabbis. So now the thing is like this, right? But today, is really our light coming from the candles? It's coming from the electricity. You know what I mean? So those candles are now playing like a very minor role in the whole lighting scheme, Like, what do they really give you? They give you like a minuscule amount of light. If you had that by itself, right, it would be nothing for you. Like, it would be meaningless. Insignificant. That's what it'll be. So then the question is like this, today, is the main point to light the electricity, or the main point to light the candles, according to halacha, So the truth is, there's a machloket about this dispute in the poskim. Some poskim say, like I heard Rabbi Yashiv, says this, something interesting. He said that today the truth is, the real candles of Shabbat is the electricity, because that's the light that we go by. It's the light that we live by. You know what I mean? And the candles are really just like a memento, of what it used to be. You know what I mean? It's like, but that's not what it is today. Like what do those candles do for you now? They don't really do much for you. So basically, what he's telling you is that today, to light the candles, light the electricity. That's really the candles. So what does that mean? According to that, you have to bless. Blessing. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher qadishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu le'agdiv et Shabbat, and to light the electricity. There are others who say, by the way, no, you have to do candles. Not electricity. They say there's a few problems with the electricity, why you can't light it and do that for the mitzvah, blah 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 blah. So we have a machloket, about this in the poskim. Which one is better? Is the electricity better? Is the candles better? So therefore, the best thing to do, if a person wants to fulfill all the opinions, what should you do? Make a blessing, and then light both the candles and the electricity. This way, the blessing will go on both of them, So either way, he's fine, But the proper thing to do is, nevertheless, right? Since the main light that we get today is electricity and not candles, so therefore, when he's lighting the candles, and making the blessing, the electricity should be preferably off. And that's what it says in the Chazon Ovadia. He writes that, even though before in his writings he wrote a little bit differently, he wasn't so adamant about that, but now, he changed his mind a little bit, and he said the proper thing is to shut off the lights, and then to light the Shabbat candles with the lights off. Why? Because if you already electricity on, then lighting candles is already quite meaningless, you're not really getting much from that. So then what's the point of making the blessing on that? What are you blessing on? It barely gives you any light. So therefore, the best thing to do is to do both. This way we cover both sides. But what's the practical difference, right, regarding that? That at least we do admit one thing, that you're allowed to bless on the electricity and light that if you need to. So for instance, let's say you're in a place where they don't allow you to light candles over there, because they have fire alarms, like hotels, and cruise ships, things like this, right? So if you're in one of those places for a vacation, what should you do? You can't light candles over there. They won't let you. They'll arrest you. God knows what they'll do. So they'll press charges on you. So what should you do? Light the electricity, and make a blessing on that. That's the way to do it. That's the way to do it, As long as you're going to enjoy that light on Shabbat, you can light the electricity and make a blessing on that. Because they won't let you light the candles. So when there's no candles, the rule is light the electricity and make the blessing. That's what the Paskin Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach and Maran Rav Ovadia Rav Shalom also Paskin that way. That you're allowed to do that, make the blessing on that, no problem. Even though there are those who are against it, some people were against it for some purposes. They said that there's no fuel involved. There's no fuel. There's no oil. There's no candle. So you can't use it. But this was already refuted by the poskim. They refuted these claims. So therefore, right, the rule is that we do light electricity when there's no candles available. That's fine, no problem with that. Another interesting fix is like this, right? They tell me, people ask me, they say, but Rabbi, how can we light the electricity, if we're in the hotel or if we're in the ship, whatever, because then we can't sleep, the lights are on all Shabbat. How can we sleep like that? So what the chief rabbi said, right? Rabbi Yitzchak Yosef Shlita. He said that the way to fix this problem, you know what you do? If you don't want the light to be on in the main room where you're sleeping there in the hotel, so then what you do is you light the electricity in the bathroom, but you don't go inside the bathroom. You light it from the outside, right? And then you light the blessing outside, and that light will give you also, it will come out some of it. Some of it will come out. You can use it to walk around the place, so you shouldn't be too dark, So you can also do that as well. The rabbi said, the chief rabbi, he said you can take the electricity, light that even in the bathroom, but don't make the bracha in the bathroom, right? Come out first, and then make the blessing, because you can't make blessings in the bathroom, because there's a toilet over there. You know what I mean? Toilet, I guess. That's the idea. So that's the way to do it. Very good. Okay. So let's go on a little bit. discuss some more things. Another important thing, right, that he points out over here in the Shulchan Aruch, in Sif Daled, he talks about the fact of, that some people, what they do, they're making a mistake, some people. They light the candles a little bit too early, before Shabbat. So what's the story? The story is that once the sun goes down, it's already Shabbat, right? So you can't light candles anymore. You can't do it by yourself. You can tell a goy to do it maybe, right? But you can't do it by yourself. So what we're saying is like this, right? That you want to be lighting the candles before sundown. So the custom is to do 20 minutes before sundown for the Sfardim. Ashkenazim have different customs, 18 minutes, 10 minutes. There's all kinds of customs by the Ashkenazim. 18 minutes is prevalent. By what's 20 minutes? It's almost the same thing. By the way, why is it that we light candles 20 minutes before the sun goes down? What's significance of that? Or 18 minutes, whatever it is, right? Because there is an opinion of Rabbi Eliezer Mimitz, one of the Balei Tosfot. He writes also about 1,000 years ago, right? Same, but Ashkenazi, not Sephardi, right? So he writes that Shabbat comes in like 15 minutes before the sun goes down. Even though it's not the halacha, but since we want to be machmir on Shabbat, since we want to be stringent on Shabbat as much as possible, so therefore the custom is to light 20 minutes before. This way we cover his opinion as well. Just in case, right, that he's right. He's not right, but we want to make it like we want to be as stringent as possible for Shabbat. That's the idea. So therefore what we do is we light early. 20 minutes, 18 minutes, whatever it is, right? Different customs. By the way, there's also another custom, which is in Jerusalem, in Israel. Some people have the custom to light 40 minutes before the sun goes down. You won't find it over here in America. But in Israel, you will find a lot of people do that. And the truth is, that I've been told by the rabbis, including Maran, Rabbi, he told us that this is not a good custom, what they do 40 minutes before the sun goes down. For several reasons, it's not a good thing to do. Why is that? Because it makes people very nervous. They go into Shabbat a little bit too early. So what that means is that Ashkenazim, when they light the Shabbat candles, they're already going to Shabbat. They can't do labor anymore. So then she can't bake some bread or do some light a stove or do something like that. Do some last minute touch ups with cooking and baking. She can't do it when she lights the candles. So what happens is that when she lights 40 minutes before, that puts a lot of pressure on the people. Because it doesn't give them enough time to finish their job of preparing for Shabbat. So this is the reason why the rabbi told us not to light 40 minutes before. Not a good idea to use this. It's just overly done, Also, a lot of people, what they want to do is, they want to, at that time, before the sun goes down, they want to drive, because they want to drive to synagogue, and park the car over there, leave it for Shabbat over there, So the problem is that if you don't let people drive to the synagogue, sometimes they can't go, and there's all kinds of things. So then what happens is, right, that 40-minute rule becomes like a real problem, It becomes liability for a lot of people, Makes people nervous, makes people edgy. So therefore, the rabbi told us, not a good idea to do 40 minutes, to light 40 minutes before, to use it like, as a obligation. If you need to do it for some reason, once in a while, no problem. But don't do it, as a regular thing, every time, 40 minutes every time. It's not necessary to do that much. There's also another thing, which is that it says in the Mishnah Berurah, Chafetz Chaim, Mishnah Berurah, he says over there in his book that a person should light candles, not more than 30 minutes before the sun goes down. And if he wants to light more than 30 minutes before the sun goes down, he has to accept Shabbat on himself, take on Shabbat. So he can't do any labor anymore. So if that's the case, right, if you want to light very early, what does that mean very early? From Plaga Mincha, right, which is about an hour before the sun goes down. So if that's the case, if you're lighting that early, you have to already accept Shabbat on yourself. Because that's already like you're lighting far from Shabbat. It's far, the distance of the time is far. So it's not recognizable you're doing it for Shabbat. So therefore the rabbi said, if you're lighting that early, that's what it says over in the Shulchan Aruch, then you have to accept Shabbat on yourself. But if you're lighting in a normal time, which means 20 minutes before, half hour before sun goes down, you don't have to accept Shabbat, according to Sephardi custom. According to Sephardi custom, as we're going to learn, right, in the Shulchan Aruch, we don't take on Shabbat when we light candles. Right? So there's no reason to take on Shabbat that early. You can light candles and then continue to do some things, to get ready for Shabbat. But for the Ashkenazim, it's a little bit different, right? By them, when they light the candles, they're taking on Shabbat. The lady, anyway, right? Is taking on Shabbat when she's lighting the candles. So therefore, if she doesn't want to, she has to have in mind, right, not to take it on. If she has that in mind, it works. She won't take it on. But otherwise, she gets dragged into Shabbat. If she doesn't have that in mind. So to keep that in mind. So the point is, right, that the best thing to do is to light 20 minutes before. But if a person wants to, light before that, 40 minutes, 50 minutes, even an hour before the sun goes down, so what should he do? He has to take on Shabbat when he lights the candles, because it's too early. That means now, once he takes it on, he can't do any labor anymore. That's it, right? All the labor is finito, finished, right? That's the idea. So the question is also, by the way, right? Shulchan Aruch talks about this. That the question is, one who took on Shabbat early. Let's say somebody took on Shabbat early. Is he allowed to tell somebody who didn't take on Shabbat, to do labor for him? He's allowed to tell him. Why? Because he didn't take on Shabbat yet. So you took it on. You're not allowed to do labor, but somebody else who didn't take it on yet, he can still do labor for you, even if you need it, something like that. You can't do it, but he can do it. So you can tell him to do it. That's the idea. Okay. Very good. So another important thing is like where it says Sifhei over there in Halacha. Shulchan Aruch, it says like this, right? That before you light the candles, you have to bless. Right? Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam asher kideshenu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu le'adlik ner shel Shabbat. So, an important thing to understand regarding this, that there's different customs, by the way, regarding this. What does that mean? That some people, what they do is, they first light the candles, and they make the blessing afterwards. First they light, and then they make the blessing. But the truth is, according to Rambam, according to most of the Rishonim, all the Rishonim almost, every one of them, except one of them, brings down something else a little bit. But the point is, right, almost all the Rishonim, all of them basically, they say that it has to be done, the blessing has to be done before you light, and not after. Why is that? Because once you lit already, you've already fulfilled your obligation, So there's no way to bless anymore. You can't bless on something you did in the past. So therefore, right, we say over l'asiyatan. What does that mean? First bless and then light, because otherwise you can't bless anymore. It's too late. You already did the mitzvah. There's nothing to bless anymore. So therefore, the rule is that Maran Rabbi he stresses this very much in his writings. That don't first light and then make the blessing, because that will be a blessing in vain according to Rambam, according to most of the Rishonim. So therefore, you got a problem, right? Even though the Ashkenazim, by the way, they have a custom to do it this way, the opposite way. The Ramah brings it down. But really, the truth is, that it's a very weak minhag, it's a very weak custom. So therefore, many of the rabbis, some of the rabbis who came to Eretz Israel, even the Ashkenazim, they already said, since now we're in a Sephardi country, Eretz Israel, we should leave this minhag, leave this custom of lighting the candles before the blessing. So therefore, they stopped doing it. Some of these rabbis. So the point is, right, that Ashkenazim can keep on doing it because that's their custom, but the Sephardim, which is not their custom, right, should not do it. Even though there are some rabbis who say they can do it, but since all the Rishonim say that right, you shouldn't do it that way, and many Rishonim say it's a bracha, it's a blessing in vain. So therefore, a person should not do it this way, right? What should he do? First bless, and then do the mitzvah, then light the candles. That's the way it should be with every mitzvah. First you bless, and then you do the mitzvah. Same thing with tefillin, right? You bless, and then you tighten it. That's the way it's supposed to be, right? Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kideshenu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu li'aniach tefillin. Then you tighten it. That's the way it should be done. By the way, what happens if in tefillin, right? When it comes to tefillin, or tzitzit, let's say, right? Let's say you didn't bless. You put it on without a blessing, and then you remembered, oh wow, I forgot to make the blessing. Can you still bless if you're still wearing the tefillin? The answer is yes. Why? Because you're still doing the mitzvah. You're still wearing the tefillin. So long as you're still wearing the tefillin, you can make the blessing. But the problem is with the candles. Once you lit it, the mitzvah is over. So there's nothing else you can do anymore. So therefore, this is the reason why, right? The rabbi used to warn us about this, by the way. All the time he talked about this, day and night, talking about this issue. Do not light the candles before you bless, because this is a blessing in vain. So whoever goes by the Shita of Maran of Shalom, and all the Rambam, and most of the Rishonim who say this, all the Rishonim who say don't first light and then bless. First bless and then light. By the way, there's one exception, which you first do the mitzvah and then you bless. There is one exception with that. You know where that is? With the convert, right? With the ger. The ger, when he goes into the mikveh, right? When does he bless? Before the mikveh or after the mikveh? So the ger, most of the time, as we said, right, we bless before the mikveh. Like the woman who goes in, the woman who goes to the mikveh, she has to first bless and then go in. But the ger, the convert, he blesses after he goes in. After he comes in. What's the reason why? Because he's not Jewish yet, so how can he bless, right? He can't make a blessing yet. Because what does it say in the blessing? Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu. It says he commanded us. Who commanded you? You're still not Jewish, right? Who commanded you? Nobody commanded you. So therefore, right, you only bless when you're Jewish, right? So you gotta wait till you come out of the mikveh, and then you bless. That's the way it is, right? According to halakha. So that's the exception to the rule. The rabbis made that especially different. Why? Because he's not Jewish yet until he goes into the mikveh. But right, regardless of that, all the other mitzvot, first the blessing, and then the mitzvah comes. That's always over the asiyatan. It's a general rule, like the Rambam says. Okay, very good. Let's go on. So here, right, another thing which is interesting is that he talks about here, like young boys, like who go to they dorm, like in a school, right, in a yeshiva, right, or whatever, wherever they're dorming, somewhere, some kind of a school. So the question is, should they light the Shabbat candles in their dorm, right? That's the question, right? And the answer is yes, because they live there. There's no woman living there, The boys are there by themselves. So therefore they have to light, So that goes according to the general rule, as we mentioned. The general rule is, if you live somewhere, you're staying there, whatever, it's your place now, because you're renting it, or you're buying it, you bought it, or whatever it was, and you live there now for this Shabbat, you have to light over the candles, because since there's no woman there, you're alone or whatever, there's only men, the men have to light. That's the idea, right? That's the way it works. Okay. But he says, as we mentioned, right, that if you're living with your wife in the same house, there you don't need to light, because your wife is lighting, So that's good enough. You know what I mean? So when there's a woman, you don't light. That's the general rule, right? Okay. So then we have also another interesting case, which is that a person who goes as a guest, to somebody's house. So what do you do over there, right? So there's different versions of this, by the way, how to solve this problem. But what the Shulchan Aruch says over here is like this, What you should do is tell the host you want to do, you want to participate with their lighting, because you can't light separately from them. I'll explain to you what that means. So the way it works like this, right? That you will purchase from them a part of the candle that they're using. You'll have a share in that mitzvah, or they can give it to you as a gift. You don't have to purchase from them, right? They're not interested in getting your nickel or a quarter, right? Whatever it is, right? So just give them right. What you do is they'll give it to you as a gift, the proportion of their candle. They're gonna light. You're gonna say amen, and they have you in mind, and that's it, right? You're done with that. By the way, even if you weren't there and they lit it, even if you weren't there to say amen, you still fulfill your obligation because you have a portion, and they gave you a portion. So therefore, since they gave you a portion, you fulfilled your obligation by having a portion in the candle. That's what you do. There's also another way to do it, which is if you want to also light yourself, as we mentioned right in the post that we published about 2 weeks ago, that a person shouldn't light in one room, right? Different people coming one after the other and lighting more and more and blessing on them, because it's blessing in vain already, according to Maran, according to Shulchan Aruch. Even though according to Ramah, according to the Ashkenazi custom, you can do that. You can light more and more and bless. But according to Sephardi custom, you cannot do that. So what do you do? According to Sephardi custom, what you do is one woman lights, makes a blessing, and then the other ones can light more candles, but without a blessing. Why? Because the first one already did the job. So the other ones are just coming to add more light. They're not really making the fundamental light there. So according to Ashkenazim, you're allowed to bless. According to Sephardim, only the first lady blesses, the first one who lit. What does that mean? The balat habayit, the radikaret habayit. What does that mean? The woman who's the head of the household there, right? The mother, whatever, right? The wife, the whatever, right? All the other ones don't bless. That's exactly what it says over here, right? Maran, in Sif Chet, right? In the 8th halacha over here, in the Siman, he says that when you're lighting, many people are in one room, as we mentioned, right? Only the first one blesses. The other ones do not bless. They can light without blessing. Because it's just additional light. You already have light there. Right? So, and this is exactly why we said in the beginning of the lecture that a person who is lighting candles for Shabbat, if the electricity is on, it's not so good. You should turn it off first. Why? Because you already have light. So then what are you blessing for? A little bit additional light, that's not really proper to do that. So the proper thing to do is to first turn off the lights and then bless for everything together. Bless and then light the candles and light the electricity. This way you fulfilled your obligation in any case. Okay. So another interesting thing is like this, that Shulchan Aruch says something which can be a little bit confusing or a little bit intimidating for some people, because what it says, right? It says, Im rova kahal kiblu aleim Shabbat. If most of the community accepted Shabbat upon themselves, so what happens is that the minority now gets dragged into Shabbat with them, so therefore they have no choice. If the majority of people already accepted Shabbat, they're already dragged in, But the truth is, I saw in the Poskim, here I see also in the Ber Hetev, he writes about this, also in the Chazon Rabbi, he writes over there that this only applies when they're like in one synagogue. In other words, they're one community, one synagogue. So most of the people accepted Shabbat over there, so everybody gets dragged in with them. But if you're talking about different communities, not everybody's in the same synagogue. So in a case like that, they don't get dragged in. So therefore, when you have a place like this in New York City, you have many communities over here, many synagogues, and so forth and so on. Just because most of the people in New York City accept Shabbat doesn't mean you have to accept Shabbat. Why is that? Because you have a different community. You're relying on a different community. There's many communities. There's Brooklyn, Queens. There's Manhattan, and it's all one city, right? Now, you should know, by the way, according to Halacha, New York City is one city. Even though there's 5 boroughs, but it's one city. So therefore, whatever happens in Brooklyn is also happening to you as well. Right? You're also part of that. You're also included in that. So therefore, the rule is, right, even there must be some place in Brooklyn, some Hasidic place, which didn't accept Shabbat because they took on Shabbat late. So therefore, you can wait, and so therefore, there's no rule like this in New York City, something like that, or a big town like this, that you get dragged along with the majority because there's different communities, there's different synagogues. Each synagogue has their own standard. Okay. That's what he says in the Ber Hetev over here, right? It says, "V'chein be'ir sheyesh ba beit knesset harbeh, ein echad nimshechet acharata." What happens is when you have several different synagogues in a town, one doesn't go according to the other, right? Each one is independent of each other. So if one accepted Shabbat, doesn't mean the other one also accepted Shabbat. Even though they're the majority, it doesn't make any difference. Okay. Something interesting also here I want to tell you is that let's say a person comes to a certain town, says the Shulchan Aruch, and they already took on Shabbat over there in that town, So you drove in, but they're already in Shabbat. They took it on a little bit early, whatever it is. So what happens over there? So if he has any money or any muktzah, right, things which are not allowed to move on Shabbat, money items, wallets, purses, whatever, things like this. So he has to let it just fall down, and just let it fall. Because he can't carry those things anymore. He's in Shabbat now. How did he get into Shabbat? Even though it's not Shabbat yet, but since that town already took on Shabbat, he gets dragged along with them. Today it's not always like that, because as we said, right, there's different communities, there's different synagogues, so it's not really an issue so much today, this thing. Okay, so another thing which is interesting, talks about this in Shulchan Aruch. Let's say it was a cloudy day, right? So what happens in those days, they didn't have watches. They didn't have clocks so much, So they used to think sometimes, when it's cloudy, like it already got dark. They thought it was dark already. It was already Shabbat. But actually, in actuality, it's not. It's just cloudy, So what happens is that people now lit candles early because they thought it was already early. Shabbat came in earlier, right? And they prayed Arvit of Shabbat. So they took on Shabbat, but actually, in actuality, it's still day. So then what happened was, all of a sudden, right, the clouds dissipated, and the sun came out. They say, oh my God, oh, we didn't know, it's still daytime. And we took on Shabbat, right, by mistake. So what's the rule, right? The rule is if they played from Plaga Mincha, which is an hour before the sun goes down, they fulfill their obligation. They don't have to pray again. Okay. Another interesting thing is like this. It talks about here in the Shulchan Aruch that let's say a person came late to synagogue a little bit, right, on Erev Shabbat, and they already took on Shabbat in the synagogue. They're already doing Kabbalat Shabbat. They're taking on Shabbat. So the question is, right now but I need to pray Mincha. I need to pray the afternoon prayers, which is of Yom Chol, which is a weekday prayer. So am I allowed to pray in that synagogue that is praying now already took on Shabbat, because they're already on Shabbat? I'm doing weekday prayers. So it says Shulchan Aruch, you shouldn't pray in that synagogue. The weekday prayer. Why is that? Because they're already in Shabbat. You cannot do the weekday. You get it's like a drag in kind of thing. You get dragged in. So what happens is like this, right? If you need to pray Mincha, afternoon prayers, you have to go into a different room or different synagogue and pray over there. You can't pray in that room where they're praying. But when does that apply? It says Shulchan Aruch, that applies only if he didn't answer and take on Shabbat himself. Because once he answers Baruch Hu, right, and takes on Shabbat, he does the Shabbat prayers himself as well. So if that's the case, he answered Baruch Hu, and he started doing the prayers of Arvit. He answered there, even though he didn't do the rest of the prayers. Nevertheless, he gets dragged into Shabbat himself. So what does that mean? Once he gets dragged into Shabbat, he can't anymore. He can't anymore pray Mincha. So what he has to do is now pray two times Arvit, the night prayer. Why is that? Because Mincha is already too late. He's already taken Shabbat. Because even though he's not really Shabbat yet, but since he took it on by answering the Baruch Hu, right, which is already the night prayer, so therefore he gets dragged into Shabbat. He cannot pray Mincha. So what is he going to do? To do two times Arvit. Two times Arvit. That's what he has to do. Okay. But another thing he says like this, right? Let's say you're going into Shabbat, right? As we said, right? You came a little bit late to the shul. So they didn't take on Shabbat yet in the shul. But once you start doing your afternoon prayers, in the middle of your prayers, they're going to take it on. So in the middle of your prayers, they're going to take on Shabbat. So in a case like that, says the Shulchan Aruch, you can do that. Why? Because since they didn't take it on yet, when you're starting, the starting point is the main point, right? So therefore, you can do it. Start praying now Mincha, even though they're already doing the Arvit of the Shabbat prayers. Okay. So as we mentioned right before, I want to reiterate this, right, because it's in the end of the Shulchan Aruch here. Siman says the Shulchan Aruch that if you took on Shabbat early, right, and you can't do labor anymore. So the rule is like this. Right? Let's say, and I just remembered, like you need to do some labor. You need to do some cooking, take something out of the oven, turn off the stove, do this, right? Turn on this, turn off that, right? All kinds of things like this. So what can you do? You can't do labor yourself. You already took on Shabbat. So you can tell your friend who didn't take on Shabbat, and he'll do it for you. Mm-hmm. That's the way it is, right? So you're allowed to do that. So what do you do? Let's say you're like, there's two people, right? You and your husband, right? The woman, right? And has a husband. So she took on Shabbat, but the husband did not. So in a case like that, what she does is she asks her husband, do this for me, do that for me, right? Take out this from the oven, turn off the stove, turn on this, all kinds of things. Why? Because she's in Shabbat, but he's still not. So therefore, he's allowed to do for her things like this, right? So the rule, by the way, also goes the opposite way as well. What does that mean? Let's say, for instance, after Shabbat goes out, the question is, right, we talked about this before, we had an extra lecture about this. When does Shabbat end, right? When does the night come? So we said, right, there's two different opinions, Rabbeinu Tam and the Geonim. So what we said, right, some people do like the Geonim, some people do like Rabbeinu Tam. So the question is like this, right? Let's say I keep Rabbeinu Tam. That means I go out of Shabbat late. 72 minutes, I wait until after the sun goes down. I do like Rabbeinu Tam. So the question is, if somebody goes out earlier from Shabbat, like the Geonim, 20 minutes, right? Not like the 40 minutes they have over here, by the way. In America, they say 40 minutes, which is not a correct time at all. There's no reason to keep 40 minutes. It's either Rabbeinu Tam or it's the Geonim. There's 40 minutes like in the middle of these two different shitot. Has no significance whatsoever. Even though it's written down in some poskim, but nevertheless, right, the Rabbi, he didn't like this opinion. He said it was a phony opinion. Fake opinion. Fake news. The 40 minutes, fake news, fake 40 minutes. So the point is like this, right? He said that, what we're saying is that if you keep Rabbeinu Tam, you go out Shabbat late, So you can't do labor until 72 minutes after the sun goes down. But somebody else is coming out of Shabbat earlier, like they're giving 20 minutes. So he's already out of Shabbat. So you can tell him, do something for me. Because he's already out. So since he's already out, you can tell him to do it for you. Or let's say, for another example is like this, right? Let's say he already made Havdalah, so he's already out of Shabbat. And you didn't make Havdalah yet, So in the case like that, you also can tell him, I didn't make Havdalah yet, do me a favor, go and do this for me, right? Whatever. He already made Havdalah. So what that means is like this, right? Sometimes keeping Shabbat is a personal thing. You're in it, but he's not, like that person is not in it. So, sometimes it can be a personal issue. You know what I mean? But once Shabbat really comes in, then everybody's in, But we're talking about here when you're adding more time, either before Shabbat or after Shabbat. So there, some people are in, some people are out, right? So according to that, they have some leeway, right? To tell one to tell the other to do something for them they cannot do themselves. So the truth is, that my daughter is married to the great grandson of Rav Ovadia. Wow. Great grandson. So why do I tell you that? Because this great grandson has a lot of news that he got from the house of the rabbi. He used to be there a lot, So he told us a few things, some interesting things. So one of the things he said was that the rabbi, sometimes you need to drive somewhere, after Shabbat. He had like a BMW 7 Series. The famous car. He was armored also, very special, special car. So, by the way, how did he buy a BMW 7 Series? Did rabbis usually buy cars like that? Not usually, right? Except these Lexus rabbis, right? But we're talking about real rabbis. So, what I'm telling you is like this, right? How did he get a BMW? What does a rabbi like this want a BMW for? What's the point, right? So the truth is, he didn't buy that car. He would have never bought a BMW.
I think you told me the story.
Yeah.
You bought it for me.
So I didn't buy it.
No, not you.
So then who did, right? So the way it was like this, right? That there was a Sephardi Jew, called Safra, like a Lebanese Jew, very wealthy man. So he was like a bank owner, By the way, until this day in Manhattan, you'll see Safra Bank, it's a big bank. So until this day, it's open, that bank, but there's many branches. It's a huge thing. So this guy Safra is a Jewish guy. So he's Lebanese, Sephardi guy. You know what I mean? So he had a chain of BMW dealers. This guy. You know what I mean? So he bought the rabbi, a 7 Series.
What year was it?
There was 2 or 3 of them. He used to switch them every 2 years. Nice.
What year are we talking about now?
We're talking about
2000?
10, 15 years ago.
10, 15 years ago?
Those nice ones, yeah. Those nice ones. Whatever it was. So yeah, so he was going. He always was white, by the way. He always gave him a white one, and it was a special one. It had armor, just the protection. It also had a special filtration system, for the climate control, to breathe good, whatever, all kinds of stuff. It was a special car, They have those special cars, by the way. They make them, these German manufacturers.
I know.
You know what I'm talking, right?
Yeah.
They cost a lot more, by the way. A lot more.
Yeah.
So I used to get those, but they look the same. You can't see it from the outside.
I know the car.
Yeah. So anyway, the point is like this, right? That the rabbi, sometimes you need a ride to go somewhere after, he used to give a lecture after Shabbat also. So you need a ride. So the driver was not keeping Rabbeinu Tam. His name was Avraham, this guy, right? Abraham. So Abraham was not keeping Rabbi Tam. The rabbi was keeping Rabbi Tam. So what he would do is tell Abraham, like drive me over here before the time Rabbi Tam came. Why is that? Because he wasn't keeping it. So might as well make good use out of it. Since he's not keeping it, right? Use him for good purpose. To help the rabbi to go somewhere, wherever it is, right? So yeah, it was an amazing thing. It was a lot of fun. All that stuff. Okay, good memories. So anyway, right, thanks for coming. You should be blessed with wealth, health, happiness, all the good things. Good tidings for all the Jewish people, and B'ezrat Hashem, redemption, coming of Mashiach. B'mehera v'yameinu, amen v'amen, chazak u'baruch.